Hello and welcome to episode 1247 of The Sleeper and the Bust. It is Friday, January 19th. I'm your host, Paul Sporer, joined this morning by Justin Mason. Justin, how's the weather over there?
So far, so good. We're expecting a lot of rain coming in here over the course of the weekend. So just getting ready, trying to batten down the hatches and everything, and make sure we don't get washed away. So I know there's a lot of people with some pretty serious snowstorms. So hopefully we can keep you warm here for your cold weather.
Absolutely. It is, the dead of winter at this point, right? The winter doldrums. We did have a little false start yesterday. So if we were looking for a Thursday episode, our apologies there. It was that impending weather that just seemed to be wreaking havoc on our connection. Seems good right now, though. Everything's way better than it was yesterday. I feel good about where we're at. So let's get into it. We got to finish up this third base preview here. We got through the first three tiers, about, what's that, 3, 6, 9, 12 guys. So the top 12 we were looking at. And, we got into a lot of the studs. So now as we jump down into this next group, which I've titled On the Rise, that's a pretty straightforward name there that you guys can gather what we're talking about here. And again, we're going to be using ADP, average draft position since Christmas, at the NFBC if you want to follow along there. Let's talk about these four. One of them was discussed on the first base preview pod, so maybe you only want to give a little consideration to Isaac Paredes, but Jake Burger, 158 ADP, Cabrian Hayes, 164, Alec Bohm, 172, and then the aforementioned Paredes at 184. These four guys all made some noise last year to varying degrees. Paredes was probably the biggest breakout. He hit 30 bombs. Did Burger hit 30 or did he come up short on that?
Burger hit 34 home runs.
Burger hit 34. Okay, so Burger might have had the biggest breakout. He or Paredes for sure. Bohm was fine, and then Cabrian Hayes with a nice big second half made sure that I was not a liar to you in our big debate. Hey, it doesn't matter when it happens. It
It
does
just
not
feels
matter.
like it happens every year that he is Brian
Doubled his
Hayes.
home run total. Literally
Yeah,
what I said he could do.
he
Doubled it.
Brian Hayes is literally like fantasy baseball meth, right? Like he is a guy that does nothing for you for so long, but man, those sweet moments. Those sweet moments will have you
Those
coming
sweet,
back
sweet
trying to get
moments.
more the next
Absolutely.
season.
And I
Uh
am trying to get more. I'm still fully in. That probably won't surprise anybody with regards to Brian Hayes. But I want to start with Berger. He made that shift in season from Chicago to Miami, and I was nervous. I'm not gonna lie. In fact, I was pretty down on it, thinking like that this could be a rough move for him that kind of curbs some of that production that we had seen. Wrong, dead wrong. He went there and continued to rake, and he was awesome. But now, what do we think of a full season of Jake Burger in Miami after the breakout? Are you still are you in?
yeah, I mean, why wouldn't you be? Like
He's got
I
everywhere power, right?
yeah, like his power play is absolutely everywhere. I'm I know I've seen some people who are like, "Oh, he's gonna regress. He's gonna regress." I mean, yeah, because like he hit 34 home runs in 540 plate appearances. Like,
Yeah, pretty massive breakout.
yeah, like you add another 100 plate appearances, which I think, pretty uniformly expect he's gonna get 600 plus plate appearances this year.
He
I
certainly
don't think
should, right?
Yeah, I think last year, he was battling early on to start the season for playing time. He's not going to have that issue in Miami. I mean, he wouldn't have had it if he hadn't been traded away from Chicago this year because he was just so good. So, like, I think he's one of those guys that, yeah, 30 plus home runs is pretty likely for him. I mean, I can't imagine he loses playing time. It's all about health, I think, for Jake Burger. He's,
Yep.
really, really struggled, throughout the minor leagues with staying on the field. So far in the majors, he's actually been pretty fine in terms of his health. So I'm not super worried about it. Uh, if you're looking for a cheap power source, that's your dude. Like he's just a guy that is going outside top 150 that could hit you 40 bombs potentially. I think I projected him for 33 home runs, but I think that could easily get crushed. Like, he's got the type of power to hit 50 if everything came together for him.
Yeah, Jake Berger, I think for those that maybe don't remember, first round pick back in 2017, 11th overall, and that doesn't guarantee anything, but has some pedigree here that injuries did derail until he finally stayed healthy this year. And it was a pretty unfortunate story there for a while until this past season of like a guy who false starts left and right, could not get healthy, finally does, breaks out, unfortunately does get traded from the organization that drafted him. And I also think I read too much into kind of like his interview after he'd been traded. First off, that's no one loves being traded, even if you're excited to go to a different team. You were traded there, but I'm like, oh man, he seems real downtrodden by this, and it's a huge park shift. Berger's gonna flop. And like I said, he absolutely did not. He was every bit as good with Miami. I think he does have the big boy power to play anywhere. I like him for 30 bombs. Even if it comes with a, 230 average, I'm not too worried about that, right? Because that's very much in the cards, 230, 30 type deal. But I believe he can hit another 250, maybe even better. Like, I don't think he's just like a Franmil Reyes type, right? Where it's just all power. We saw him hit 303 with Miami. Now that's in 217 plate appearances. But where are you at on something like that? We know the power's there for Berger. How real is some of that batting average spike that we saw in Miami? Do you think that it is just running hot, or could he be, I don't know, a 270 guy? Because that'd be really dynamic at that point, coming after pick 150 for Berger.
270 is pretty tough for a guy like Berger. We're talking about a guy who had a 17% swing and strike rate. He doesn't
walk.
Yeah, it doesn't walk. He doesn't make league average contact in the zone. He swings outside of the zone a ton. He's gonna, I think, have a lot of wiggle room in terms of where the batting average could lie, and a lot of it's going to depend on the BABIP. A lot of it's going to depend on how much contact he can make. Like, I think is there a world in which he can hit 270? Yeah, absolutely. There's also a world in which he can hit 200. So
exactly, I do think it's a wide range.
Yeah, so I think you need to just be pretty careful about your batting average leading up to taking a guy like Jake Berger. If you've got like a Kyle Schwarber already, you probably shouldn't be drafting Berger. That being said, the dude smacks the piss out of the ball. Like, it's like his max exit velocity last season was, I think, 118.2.
Dang.
Which was sixth best in baseball.
Yeah, that is tattooing it. And again, we've seen that with Berger. I agree, though. It is a big range because of the plate skills. He did ride a 354 BABIP with Miami. It was 225 with Chicago. So basically, he ran the bad luck in Chicago, got all the good luck in Miami. It balanced out to a 284 and a 284 BABIP and a 250 average. That's probably where Berger's going to be. But I do think there's at least a universe, and it's not, some rare 0.5% universe where he could hit 260, 270. And that would be amazing.
Absolutely.
But plan for about 240 with the 30 bombs.
I will say that his XBA was 268.
That's pretty nice, even with a 284 BABIP.
And he's one of those guys that could run, kind of run a BABIP higher than you would expect from a guy who's not very fast.
Correct.
Because he just that power smacks that ball. I mean, his barrel rate was pretty sexy. It
was 17%, which is massive.
And he had the seventh highest barrel per plate appearance percentage last year.
Not only that with Berger, but he doesn't live in the air. He actually had a 43% ground ball rate, which does help batting average. And so if you're smacking, you want to be in the air for power, of course, but when you're ripping it at 115 and higher on the ground, no one's getting in front of that. Those are going in for base hits. So lots to like with Berger. Playing time should be on lock. I think the price covers a lot of the downside. Not all of it. He could be worse than pick 156 for sure. But I think you can take on those risks. I agree with you, though. Stabilize your batting average before you take him.
Absolutely.
Maybe with this guy, although you'd have 2 third base only players, but Cabrian Hayes, that's more of his draw. Is the idea that he can hit for a quality batting average. Jumped up to 271 last year from 244. I never really thought he was a 244 guy. Doubled his home run total. I heard that he could do that somewhere. Man, that guy's really smart. Did need 10 in the final 2 months, but again, doesn't really matter when it happens. I do think we as a fantasy community get a little too hung up on some of that. Like, oh, it happened in the last month, or it happened in the first month. I don't give a shit.
At
It's
least it
worth
happened.
less or
Yeah.
it's worth more. Like, no. I'm all about being mindful of that. I love getting into game logs and splits and whatnot, but I don't think it invalidates anything. He also missed all of July, so he gave the league a month, Cabrian Hayes did, and still doubled his home run total. Where are we at now? You were the one who was, little misaligned on him last year. Does anything change your mind here? Where do you stand with Cabrian Hayes at a 165 ADP?
I mean, I've never disliked Cabrian Hayes. He's always, since he's come into the league, he's been one of my, kind of favorite players to kind of fall back on at the third base position. Largely because he is the king of making contact. Like, this dude just, all he does is make in zone contact. And last year was no different. 92.4% is fantastic, especially when you consider the league is usually around 84, 85%. Doesn't swing out of the zone very much. Swinging strike rate. We were just talking about Jake Berger's 17% swinging strike rate. Cabrian Hayes is 8.5%. Literally cut that shit in half.
That is nice
for Hayes. I think there is a year in which he hits like 320.
That's what I'm waiting for. That's the one I'm really angling for, is that big season from Cabrizi.
And we know there's speed, right? Like the stolen bases did get cut in half last year, but it's hard to steal bases when you're running around or jogging around them. So I would say I probably am not going to project much or probably any power growth. He still just does not get the ball in the air enough, and that is a really tough part. He's actually one of those guys, Cabrian Hayes, where like if he were to end up in a different park at some point in his career, then we start, because he's got like fence scraping power. And in Pittsburgh, he gets it sapped. You go look at like his spray chart in Pittsburgh, and you go, oh, like he's getting robbed of home runs being in that park. So like, we talked about Jeimer Candelario as a guy who like, oh, now he's going to Cincinnati and he's going to get extra. If Cabrian Hayes ever got traded or, when he does get to free agency, which is going to be a while because he signed a long-term deal, like if he landed in a better park, like, ooh, he could be like really, really interesting.
That'd be a lot of fun.
But for the most part, I think he's kind of, I don't know, he's a Diet Coke version of a stud, right? Like he can do everything. He just doesn't do a ton of everything, which is fine. Like I love those kind of guys because I think they get undervalued in the market and they continue to leave your options open for future picks. So he steals some bases, gets for a little bit of power. I think the counting stats and runs and RBIs will continue to get better because I think Pittsburgh is going to continue to get better. And you get batting average, which is always something you can struggle to find at this point in the draft.
Yep, I agree with all that on Cabrian Hayes, maybe with like a little extra positivity on his outlook, because I think I like him just a little bit more. Now, I'm not projecting another doubling of the home run total.
Oh, yeah? You don't want to go out on a limb and say, oh, he's going to double it again?
Yeah. We're not double it and give it to the next one here.
By 2027, he's hitting 89 home runs, right?
No, I still think 20 could be there, though. We need a full season this time, though. We still haven't seen that big 600 plate appearance season. and we could see 18 to 20 then with the nice average. I'm with you though. The angle I'm looking at is keep pumping that average. Give
Yeah.
me a 288 average. Give me that season, even if it is with another 15 homers and 12 to 15 steals. But there's still a lot to like. Still believe there's upside at 27. I will have my Brian Hayes shares at pick 165. What about Bohm? He's down at 172. He is kind of the in between of these two, I kind of think, right? Where he's got maybe a little bit more power than Cabrian, much less than Berger, and then also has the average of Cabrian Hayes, right? So if you're looking at him on a spectrum from average to power, it's Cabrian, Bohm, Berger. Do we
I
like
think
where Bohm's trajectory's been going?
I don't think Bohm is any different than Cabrian Hayes.
Well, he already had 20 homers, so
I think that's because of the park. I think this is what you could expect if Cabrian Hayes was in Philadelphia.
But so we still have to judge them like that, though, because of where they are. But that is a good point. There's your guy. This is what Cabrian Hayes could look like in a good park, is what you're saying. Alec Bohm.
Yeah, exactly. Like Alec Bohm is like, minus the speed, because Alec Bohm, he might steal
Not particularly
a few
fast.
bases, like maybe 3 or 4. So, but you get a 90% zone contact rate. You get a guy who has got that fence scraping power, which in Philadelphia is a good thing because it's, a little bit smaller park, and it's a really good lineup around him. I mean, I think he's completely fine. I don't end up drafting him very often because typically typically by this point I've already got my batting average and I'm kind of looking for other things. But there are builds in which, you do end up with Kyle Schwarber and you're like, okay, I need some more batting average and a guy who's not going to crush me in the power categories while I do that, like a Luis Suarez or something. So I think that Bohm has his place in certain builds in the same way that Cabrian Hayes has his place in certain builds. So no problem. I think he's got a very, very safe profile as long as he's healthy. No reason to think he won't be.
Yep, I agree with that. I think that makes a lot of sense there. He definitely does have his place. If you're interested in an Alec Bohm, and we did talk Isaac Paredes, I honestly don't remember what we said, but I think we're still pretty strong on him doing well. And at pick 184, the market really hasn't overreacted to the big season. I'm actually kind of surprised. It's a devil ray. It's a ray, which people generally seem to have interest in. Although maybe that is part of why, is because of the games they play with their non-superstars.
I think there is this fear, and I don't think the fear is unfounded, that a guy like Paredes could lose playing time if he struggled, right? Because the Rays are so platoon happy. The problem is the Rays are not as stacked as they usually are in the infield. I mean, we're talking about obviously they're never getting Wander Franco back. Taylor Walls is coming off of labrum surgery in his hip. You and I both talked about Junior Caminero and Curtis Mead. I don't know that they're even making the team to start the year. So I don't think there's a ton of competition, at least starting out, for a guy like Paredes. So and I think there are some people who look at kind of what he did in terms of getting those 30 home runs as unsustainable, because he pulled pretty much every single one of them. But that's kind of what Paredes does. And I think people forget that Paredes was like a top 50 prospect in baseball for the Tigers before getting traded. So,
and is it pull power more bankable than Apo
I would
tacos?
think so. Yeah, absolutely. And that park is kind of set up for him to do that. So there's no reason why he wouldn't continue to try to do that. So I'm not super worried. Maybe there is some regression, but I don't think it's massive regression on Paredes where you should be avoiding him. He lost second base eligibility, but he still got first, third. I mean, I got no problem taking Isaac Paredes. I just think he is pretty bankable power with dual eligibility.
Yep, I think that makes sense. First and third, by the way, for Isaac Paredes. So those guys are on the rise. Let's talk some steady production guys here. We do have several guys that we've already discussed, including the aforementioned Jeimer Candelario, but we got Max Muncy, an ADP of 173. Then we jump down into the 200s with Jeimer Candelario at 217, Ryan McMahon 227, Luis Rengifo 259, Matt Chapman 268, doesn't have a team yet, and Eugenio Suarez at 277 has a new team. Let's start with Muncy. If I'm recalling correctly, let me pull this up. I think in Jeff's Mining the News yesterday being the 18th of January, depending on when you're listening to this, or no, it's always the 18th of January. I'm citing it because you might not be listening to this the day it comes out. That's how I should phrase that. But they're talking maybe some potential platooning for Max Muncy, that he's at maybe a bit of a platoon risk. I'm a little bit surprised by that just because he's been such a stalwart for them for quite some time now. But as they kind of continue to add pieces, they're saying, hey, he could be at some risk here if things don't go well for him. Now, I will say he has not shown big splits, 807 against lefties, 830 against righties in his career. Now it went to 642 against lefties last year, 881. So that was a really big split for Muncy last year. Basically, they're kind of threatening him. If you continue to do that, you're going to lose some PT. And that was in Jeff's latest Mining the News there, that there could be some of that. What do you think? Does that change your outlook on Muncy? Was he somebody you were in on, coming off a 36 homer season, but a 212 average? Where do you currently stand with Max Muncy as he enters his age 33 season?
Yeah, some really interesting splits on Muncy last year. Really good piece by Jeff. I mean, as always, but like obviously the batting average was lower against left-handed pitching, but the walk rate was down. He had a 16.7% walk rate against right-handed pitching last year, a 10% walk rate against left-handed pitching. Now, 10% walk rate is still good, but when you're hitting like 174, or sorry, let's see, he was actually hitting 155 versus lefties last year. And it's the second year in a row where he's got a sub 200 batting average versus left-handed pitching. Like,
that's becoming an issue.
Even if you are walking at a 10% rate, that's still not good enough to stay in the lineup. And it's not like he's a defensive stalwart either, like where like they can afford like, oh, you suck against lefties, so we're gonna, but you're good defensively. He's not good defensively. So I think there is a world in which this happens. I also don't know that they're strong enough at third base to
maybe Chris Taylor.
God, I mean, like that is
the Energizer Bunny.
Yeah,
just
like
keeps ticking.
Replacing a beat up car with like a tricycle missing two wheels. Right? Like,
could it be? Let me look real quick. If he's played this position, literally 6 innings. No, I was gonna say because I think he has played some third. I was gonna say maybe Lux moves over there sometimes when Rojas plays short. But
I think he maybe better playing even Rojas at third. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how they would do it.
I think it's Taylor. Taylor's the one that's likely to get some of that PT.
Taylor's garbage too, so it's like why even like
garbage?
Yeah, he is. He's absolute garbage.
In what way is he garbage other than being a Dodger and you're a Giants fan?
I mean, wasn't he pretty bad last year in terms of his I'm
gonna guess minimum league average type player. He's Chris Taylor.
If I'm remembering correctly, and I'm double checking right now, his offense was pretty. Oh no, actually, you know what? I'm wrong. And I will retract it. He had a 104 WRC plus. He had 237, but he still had over 10% walk rate. Okay, yeah, no, I'm wrong. I seem to remember him sucking more than that. He just somehow continues to make it work with a 33% strikeout rate. I don't know how, but he does.
That is dodgy. No doubt about it with regards to Chris Taylor, but he's always backed it up with a strong walk rate at the very least. He's got some pop. Of course, he can run for fantasy purposes too. Had 16 bags. So yeah, he's going to get some of that third base time if they are indeed platooning Muncy and he doesn't improve against lefties. So I think that's a consideration. At 173, does that bother you for Max Muncy?
I mean, a little bit, because there are guys going after him that I feel much safer about their playing time. I mean, Candelario just signed a contract. He's going to play. Ryan McMahon is like, I mean, you can pretty much, fill out your crossword puzzle with Ryan McMahon and pen. You don't have to use pencil, because he's just going to deliver you 22 home runs and, halfway decent average every year. Rengifo has real upside if he does play every day. And the way the Angels are currently constructed, he's got a chance to play every day. Wherever Matt Chapman signs, he's playing every day. Now that
do you have any idea on where he's going to sign? I haven't heard a freaking single rumor.
San Francisco's been tied to him the entire offseason.
Would you be interested in that as a Giants fan, Matt Chapman?
I would, but not for the fantasy reasons. He's just a premium defensive player, and
he's just a good player.
The Giants have so many sinker ballers that, at some point, if you're going to continue to go after these sinker ballers, then you should probably get a guy who can play defense behind them. And Matt Chapman is still an elite defensive player. So
agreed.
San Francisco makes a lot of sense. Toronto makes a lot of sense. The Yankees make a lot of sense. Well, I guess maybe not as much sense because they've got so many pieces already.
Yeah.
So, I mean, who couldn't use, Gold Glove caliber defense at the hot corner, to be quite honest. So, I mean, I think I still don't understand, these four top free agents in Chapman and Snell and Bellinger and Montgomery, why aren't they signed? This is...
It is a little curious. And again, the rumors have been light, too. It doesn't even feel like...
I thought once all the Japanese and Korean players had signed, we'd get, this kind of, okay, now the market moves back again. And for some reason, I don't know if teams are hey, we're going to wait out these players and see and I think especially with the pitchers, that's what's happening. But yeah, I think you start getting more worried as pitchers and catchers report if these guys aren't signed. As far as they're concerned, they're still just on beaches drinking pina coladas right now. They don't.
True.
It doesn't matter where they go.
Mid-Feb will be here quickly, right?
It'll sneak
we're
up. 3 weeks away from this being a real issue.
Yeah, and then if you're one of those guys, it's uh-oh, now I need to sign. And again, I'm sure their representation's working on it and all that. I'm not blind to that notion that just because it's not in the news doesn't mean there's any movement on it. It's just been a little curious how light information has been with regards to these guys moving forward. So we'll see what happens with them. I like Chapman. Where do you think he goes up to when he signs? Let's just say he goes to the Giants. That will not be a huge fantasy outlook. So does that increase his price much, in your opinion? What would you think about that if Chapman did become a Giant?
Yeah, I think he would jump above Eugenio Suarez at 264, but I don't think he's getting to Luis Rengifo at 240.
I think that's fair.
Especially
in San Francisco, because that would not really increase his outlook.
But again, he's one of these guys who has kind of real manpower, right? It's not... I'm not super worried about where... he played in Oakland, for God's sake. And
AT&T... fuck, they changed it. Oracle does not eat up righties nearly as much.
Yeah.
So he could still... Matt Chapman can still pop 25, 30 there with relative ease, and gets that week at Coors, gets to... Well, I guess there isn't really any other super friendly places in the division, though, right?
Well, Dodgers is pretty friendly.
Yeah, but you have to face the Dodgers.
Yeah, that's true.
No, because I was going to say Chavez Ravine, and then I was like, well, wait, you're still facing the Dodgers, and aren't they pretty righty heavy at this point?
Yeah.
Now, Yamamoto.
Mm-hmm.
Who else they got?
Emmett Sheehan and
Bobby Miller. I knew there was somebody I loved that I was missing.
Yeah, it's I mean it's like it's just really really good pitching. So yeah, so I guess it doesn't really matter.
But yeah,
he doesn't get to face his own pitching.
Yes, let the Giants pitch to him there in.
I mean, I'm sure major league teams would love coach pitch.
That'd be
facing
hilarious.
the Dodgers. Like,
yes.
Hey, you get to come in and face your own pitchers, but
because then they have to face their own pitchers.
Yeah,
too.
Exactly. Right.
It's not optional.
You guys hadn't signed all these guys, huh?
Yeah. Now, how do you feel about having such a good team? Idiots.
But I mean, I think Matt Chapman is kind of who he is at this point.
Sure.
I think last year, I'm kind of not super worried about like the huge power drop off. I think Chapman is probably a mid-20s homer guy who's probably in the 230 batting average range. So like there is a lot of batting average risk to a guy like Matt Chapman because he makes so little contact inside the zone, but he's going to have a 10% or better walk rate to kind of offset that, get him on base more. And because he is such a fantastic defender, he continues to be, like, he's going to play every single day. You can pencil him in for 150 games, no problem. I think Chapman is kind of a boring power guy.
Yes. Now, curious if you make anything of the super fast start last year, excellent beginning of the season, and then a heavy fade with only July being a good month. Like May, June, August, and September were dog shit. But then April and July were great. Do you make anything of that, like the fast start and then the slowdown, or just kind of a tough season for Chapman?
I think that is a perfect example of who Matt Chapman is. When like
the volatility.
When a guy like him is locked in, he is a potential MVP. And when he is not locked in, he is an absolute mess. And you're going to see both versions maybe multiple times throughout the season. And so like this is, I mean, all the people who are like going, oh my God, we've got like MVP Matt Chapman back finally, early on in the season. Like,
it looked like it for a second there.
I mean, I guess
in the first month, he was amazing. I know he was running a 485 BABIP. Like, I understand, like, first month hotness, but he's in Toronto. Like, they had changed the stadium. Like, here we go. He's going to go crazy. And no, he did not. He decidedly did not go crazy.
I mean, I think it's just always, I think when guys start off hot, like even more so than like when they have like end of the year flourishes or mid-season flourishes, we have gone without real baseball for so long that we just get excited, right?
True.
Like, if it had happened in June, we would have noticed just because he was running so hot.
He hit 15 doubles.
Yeah, like he was running extremely hot. Like we would have noticed. But we also would have been we would have seen so many other hot streaks to start off the season. Mm-hmm. We wouldn't have been anointing him in the way that some people were. And so it happens every year. I remember a year where you and I were like, ooh, is this a new Didi Gregorius? I think it could be I had Draft Sheet on the podcast a while back. And he made a really, really good point. And he's like, sometimes a hot streak is just a hot streak. And even the underlying numbers, which Matt Chapman's underlying numbers were really, really good during the stretch, can just be part of that hot streak. So don't overreact to them. Like,
I think that's a great point. Because, obviously you're not going to know until you get through it. The tough part is everyone wants to be part of the breakout if it's there. So I understand you have to jump early, right? Like that's the tough part about today's fantasy game versus decades ago. You don't get to wait and just kind of see it through. Like, let's see where this is going. No, if someone's looking good early, people are going to jump quickly off of like a pretty small sample too. So that is part of it.
People
So
have gotten really good at jumping on, but what we have to be able to do is jump off really quick.
true.
If the Henry Wilson in the chat, it was in fact not a new DD Gregorius.
Decidedly
It was
unnew.
not. But I remember being so excited because you and I were discussing and we're looking at it and we're like, so contact's up, he's not swinging and missing,
dude.
like he's making really good contact, like he's doing all the things I think this is like a new DD Gregorius. And then like a month later we were like, he may not have a job soon. Like, yay.
And
I
now
think it's
he doesn't.
Yeah, he's in Korea, right? Or at least he was, I think, last year. So I think this is, it's just a good reminder to be like, guys like Didi Gregorius, guys like Matt Chapman, they're all major league talents. And a major league talent can show a month or 2 months of just amazingness and then regress back to what they were. Because they're all just premium hitters, comparatively speaking, to the field. But remember that these guys, some of these guys especially, have a lot of volatility, and that's why I fall back on things like zone contact rate, because I think those are indicative of guys who have just natural hitting ability.
Yep, I think that makes sense a lot, especially when you're trying to analyze a hot streak of like, well, what skills are going on. And, sometimes you're going to jump and like Draft Cheat said, the skills were there. Things looked like it was the right setup, but it was still just a hot streak, and you got to be ready to move on. Eugenio Suarez moving to the desert from Seattle to Arizona. Does that change your outlook on him at all? Like, he feels like what you see is what you get, but anything with Arizona that makes you excited about Eugenio Suarez?
I don't think it changed my outlook at all. I think it is a very, very lateral move. I think Eugenio Suarez will continue to be Eugenio Suarez that he has been, which is a guy who 25, 30 home runs, a batting average that doesn't excite you, but they hit in the middle of that Arizona lineup, which is just getting better and better. What it does excite me for, though, and this isn't what we're talking about today, is the defense, because it was already the best defense of baseball. And in spite of, I think Eugenio Suarez gets this like tag of like, oh, he's a crappy defender. No, he was a crappy defender at shortstop.
That's exactly
when he shouldn't have been playing shortstop for the Tigers. So
that's exactly it. Is that he played shortstop for Cincinnati.
Oh, sorry, Cincinnati.
A little bit too, like when he first came up. And that's exactly it. Is that gets carried, and they're like, he's a bad defender. So I agree with you. Continue about Suarez at third. Like he's actually pretty solid.
I think he's better than solid. I think he is an above average to pretty good defensive shortstop. Defensive third baseman. And I think for some reason he still has this tag in people's minds that he's bad. If you look at his Savant page, his fielding run average is the 90th percentile. Like he was a great defensive third baseman. He doesn't have amazing arm strength, but his range is actually really, really good. And so you're already adding him on top of a really, really great up the middle defense in Arizona. And now like all those pitchers get a little bit of an extra bump for me. So I don't think anything changes offensively for Suarez, but I think defensively for the Diamondbacks in general, like this, you already had an amazing infield defense and an amazing outfield defense, and now the infield defense may have just gotten a little bit better.
Yeah, I don't know where Longoria was with his numbers, but I feel like he could still pick it a bit. But Suarez, like you say, is legit.
Longoria, but like Longoria,
and he wasn't playing every day.
Yeah, he couldn't play every day. It was exactly what I was going to say. Like he was at a point in his career where I think he was still a pretty good defensive player, but offensively he couldn't hang. And he was just, he's in his mid-30s. Like, at this point, he's just
got a lot of mileage.
Yeah,
on the body.
me in my mid-30s, like I can't podcast every day. So like, how is he supposed to even play the field every day?
That's totally fair. Right. Okay, let's continue to move on here.
I like how you didn't even challenge the fact that I'm in my mid-30s.
How old are you not?
I'm going to be 40 this year.
Yeah, so you're still mid-30s.
Yeah, it's still
That
mid,
still counts.
right?
Yeah, that's what
Absolutely.
I thought you were like 38. So you're 39 going on 40. Okay, I had a year off there because I'm like, yeah, 38. You're still mid-30s, but even 39, mid-30s until it's a 4 in front of it. You're mid-30s.
I think my wife is feeling or thinking more about me turning 40 this year because she or maybe she's just trying to get under my skin because she keeps making comments about it.
Definitely trying to get under your skin.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not turning 40.
I don't
care.
Really
Who cares?
Yeah,
I'm with you.
Less.
Let's talk youth movement though. Speaking of the opposite of 40 here, this is a big group. We got a lot of guys to talk about here. Maybe could have broken them up a little bit because some of them are like really deep. But we're gonna run from ADP 175 to 515 here. But all these young guys have some intrigue, and I want to talk about most of them. Noelvi Marte at 175, Maikel Garcia 218, Junior Caminero 222, Jordan Westburg 300, Tyler Black 341. Colt Keith or Keith Colt, who knows? 355, Brett Baty 356, Ezequiel Duran 395, Curtis Mead 448, Michael Bush 482. That should be going up, I would imagine, and Kobe Mayo 514. So these young guys here at third base, this is a giant group. They won't all be good. I'm sure of that. By the way, I should have included Wilmer Flores in the steady production there. Do you like him at all at pick 330? I want to cover him before we move.
If I knew he was gonna play every day, like I would be interested in Wilmer Flores, but
never really does.
Don't.
He has switched his platoon though. Remember, he used to be known as a lefty killer, and now he can kind of handle righties a bit. So I didn't mean to dip back to an old guy there, but I wanted to make sure we didn't gloss over him.
It's so hard to know what the Giants are going to do in terms of like how much does having a new manager affect how they fill out the lineup card, like
True,
or use the bullpen, or use our starting pitchers for that matter. Like I think there's so much.
Steele now, right? Like we used to talk about it before, but now with Steele's back in vogue, it's even a bigger deal of like, how much does this new manager steal? So we not that is a rule for Flores. Or anything,
it doesn't matter for Flores. Yeah. But I really don't like. It's so hard to project a guy like Flores because is he going to get to 500 plate appearances? I don't know.
Shrug. Who knows? Okay, so the youth movement here. Let's start with Noelvi Marte. He's the only one inside the top 200. Premium prospect. Remember, started back in Seattle. Was part of the big Luis Castillo trade. Now he's out there in Cincinnati. He's definitely somebody that probably saw that Jeimer Candelario news come across the ticker, and he's like, that's kind of a bummer. But he did play 35 games at the major league level last year, held his own with a 120 WRC plus. I mean, that's more than holding your own. That's really strong. 316, 366 OBP, 456 slug for Noelvi Marte at age 21 in the majors. What is his outlook now in that crowded Cincinnati infield? Can he be the breakthrough guy who plays third? We do currently have him penciled in as the third baseman. Where do you stand on Noelvi Marte at pick 175?
I think the cloudy forecast is warranted right now. Like he was a guy like in I think my first Gladiator. I took him to be my third baseman because I missed out on a lot of the other options leading up.
Had Candelario signed yet?
No.
Okay.
And then the Candelario signing happened, and I have not gone anywhere near or close to picking Marte. Because I think there is a reasonable chance he starts here in the minors. But like the conversation with Ellie De La Cruz and the conversation with Matt McLean and Jonathan India is I just don't know what the Reds are going to do here. So I've been a little bit less excited to pick him in drafts because I'm just kind of covering my bases until we see a trade or we see, we hear something in, spring training. So I love the skills. The skills are great. He hit 316 and yes, he had a pretty high BABIP, but his XBA was 296. So it wasn't like he was like, a dog shit, player that just, ran a really hot BABIP. 88% zone contact is very good. Swing strike rate of 10.5%, very, very good. Even, has shown double-digit walk rates in the minor leagues. It was only 6.5% in the majors, but he only struck out 20% of the time. Like, I think all the skills are there for him to be a really interesting player. And, the question is how much power is in that bat, because it is a fantastic ballpark to hit in. He hits the ball on the ground a fair amount, and has kind of throughout the minor leagues. So, I think it's the same issue with Ellie, right? I mean, obviously Ellie's got more power because he just smacks the piss out of the ball, but Noelvi Marte, like he's got a bunch of power on the bat, but he's got to raise that launch angle. His launch angle is 1.9 degrees last season, and so I think there is kind of it's a weird profile, because you know what? It's very much like Brian Hayes, but he's not Brian Hayes in Pittsburgh. Like he's Brian, he's in Cincinnati. He makes a lot of contact. I think there's going to be a good batting average. Even just if he could get his launch angle close to double digits, like I think there's 20 plus, maybe even more home runs. Obviously not a super fast burner, but we saw, a number of stolen bases from him. So if he's playing, I really, really like him. I just don't know that he's playing.
Yeah, I'm looking at this roster resource here for the Reds. I honestly think it makes more sense for Candelario to play third, CES to play first, and Noelvi to start in the minors.
Why?
I think I just believe in CES more as a major leaguer.
Okay, and I understand that. I get that, completely. But
right now, by the way, not long term necessarily.
I think the Reds may believe in Marte more.
I don't know, man. He is 3 years younger than CES too, or maybe 2 years. History tells me that and this team too, they play things kind of by the book more so than calling up the young guy, I think, and giving the job to Noelvi. Maybe I'll be wrong, and I'm open to that, and I'll gladly discuss and say, hey, I had that one wrong. But that's kind of where I see it breaking down right now. We've got CES on the bench with Candelario at first, Marte at third. Is that possible? Sure. My bet right now would be Marte to start in AAA, just to get more seasoning. Yes, he did well in that sample, but
this is my fear about drafting Marte, right?
Absolutely fair.
Easily, if they decide, I think that all of them are going to be up. I still think Jonathan India gets moved. And I think that this
I don't think he has enough trade value, man. I think they're probably exploring it and finding that nobody really wants a guy who probably has to move off of second base soon.
Yeah,
doesn't have the skills to be a first baseman or DH.
You look at all these guys, in kind of where they played, they all played at different positions. I think they want this flexibility. I think, I don't think that this is going to be a matter of they don't serve whatever they're going to figure out the service time stuff later. And this is kind of in some ways worst case scenario, because at least if okay, Marte does get sent down, or CS doesn't get sent down, or God forbid Ellie gets sent down or something like that, then you're okay, now we know where the playing time is for everybody. I think what is the much more likely scenario is none of them get sent down. And it's not a matter of one guy losing playing time, but every guy losing a little bit of playing time.
Honestly, though, for me, that really wouldn't bother me that much, because that's how it is these days anyway.
Yeah,
and I mean, a lot of guys share time regardless, so I wouldn't even be super pressed by that if that did happen.
And every year we have situations like this around the league, and they all figure themselves out because of injuries. Right? I mean, injuries or player performance. One guy isn't going to play well, and he'll be the guy who's sent down, or one guy or two guys will get hurt, and all of a sudden that amazing depth You know, we say it every year with like the Dodgers. Why won't
Yep.
the Dodgers like trade their pitching? Because every year one or two guy gets hurt, and all of a sudden if they don't have amazing depth, they just have normal depth.
And that's why I have been saying that I don't think that they make a trade either, because I think they need the depth. And as much as I raised my eyebrow on the Candelario signing like everybody else did, but they're saying, hey, we got a guy who we think is a fair price to further give us depth and not put too much pressure on Noelvi Marte and CES if we don't want to. And now we're so rich in hitters right now. They don't even have Jake Fraley starting. And I don't necessarily disagree with it. And you know I love Jake Fraley, but they got Benson in right now, Friedel in center, and Steer in left.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're just deep. It does make it hard to pay a top 200 pick for Noelvi Marte to bring it back to the guy we started with here.
Yeah.
I can't pay it right now.
I haven't, like I said, I haven't paid it since the Candelario signing, and I don't know.
I'm willing to lose on.
Yeah, I am too.
I'm willing to lose on him if he's ready to go and people take him, and he puts up like a pick 150 type season. Hats off to you. What about Maikel Garcia in Kansas City? You know, he came up and it was a different Michael. I know he pronounces it Maikel versus Michael, but I was on the Michael Massey train, which, by the way, I have not gotten off of that train.
I haven't either.
Did we discuss him at second base?
Yeah, we did.
Okay.
Yeah, and we both
expressed,
and he's been,
we expressed our continued love.
Massey has been one of my most drafted players.
Yeah, because he is not expensive.
Yeah.
Maikel Garcia is not expensive, but at 218, you know, that's a pick that matters, especially in a 50-team draft and hold. 4 homers, 23 steals in the majors last year, 515 plate appearances. I've seen some of his proponents suggesting that maybe he could boost the batting average a good bit. I don't know where you're at on Maikel Garcia. I haven't done a full deep dive, so I don't have a great read on him. I know he's a speedy guy who played a bunch last year, 24 years old. There's no reason not to continue to play in KC. So if he put up like a 7 homer, 30 steal season, I could totally see it. But is there that big batting average potential that some of his proponents have suggested for Maikel Garcia in KC?
I don't necessarily see it, but you never know. But probably not. Like he doesn't have bad skills. He actually has pretty good skills, but they're not like at least he hasn't shown him to be like elite skills. I think he is I think he's exactly what we saw last year, which is a 270 guy. What I do think we could see from him from Garcia is maybe a higher walk rate than just 7.5%. He is
and a lower strike rate, by the way. 8% swinging strike rate with a 22% K rate. Talk about his walk rate too, because he had good ones in the minors, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean, he had double-digit walk rates kind of sprinkled in through a lot of his minor league work, and you know, like he showed good plate skills at the major league level. We're talking about a guy who only swung outside of the zone about a quarter of the time, which is pretty darn good, right? When usually I think 32% of swing is around league average. When you're at 24%, like that's a pretty good idea of where the strike zone is. You mix that with an above average zone contact rate, and I think you've got the makings of a really, really good young hitter that could, hit like 275 with a close, 9 to 10% walk rate, and all of a sudden you're looking at a guy who's like, hey, he could be like 340, 350 on base kind of guy. So I don't think there is a ton of power in the bat, but we're always kind of looking, or at least I'm always kind of looking for a guy who could be this year's Cedric Mullins, this year's TJ Friedel. And I think often people equate that with like, oh, this is a guy going outside the top 300 that, is going to break out. And don't get me wrong, like part of it is like the price that you're getting him at, but most of it is a guy that is undervalued because people don't realize that he's going to be leading off for a pretty decent team. Mm-hmm. And if you look at where Maikel Garcia was hitting all of pretty much, yeah, from July 1st on. He only had two games where he didn't lead off.
From July 1st on, Maikel Garcia, you say he was the leadoff in all but 2 games?
I believe so. I'm double checking that I'm not missing any because one of the ones where he hit third, he was a pinch hitter. Actually, one of the ones he hit seventh, he was a pinch hitter. He only had 1 game, and it was on July 16th, where he played and wasn't the leadoff hitter to start the game. Like, that is on a team that, I know people are going to scoff at me. This is a better offensive team than people are giving it credit for.
I agree. We saw Witt take another step forward. We're a big fan of several of the other guys there. Vinny P's coming back. We talked about Massey, Maikel Garcia himself. Sal Perez is still a stalwart. I still think MJ Melendez, we haven't seen the best of his bat.
Yep.
I'm a Kyle Isbell guy. Freddie Furman did some things, batting last year too. So I don't think you're out of pocket on that. And if Maikel Garcia can lead off, I mean, is 40 SBs on the table? Are 40 SBs on the table?
I think it could be.
Because he's ran like that in the minors. Maikel Garcia had 39 in 2022 between double and triple A. He only had 24 games at triple A last year and was only 4 for 7. I'm not too worried about that because then he came up and went 23 for 30 at the major league level. So could be a 40 bag type of guy.
I don't think he's necessarily like he's not a burner. I think he's definitely more of a smart base dealer who has above average speed. And I'll double check his sprints.
Does not get caught much though. I think Maikel Garcia could really have something.
Yeah, I just think he is a very a smart athlete. He's 73rd percent sprint speed, so like he's above
totally
average,
fine.
But he's not a burner. So I'm thinking I think there is a world in which he has 8-9 home runs, but 30 stolen bases and a 270 batting average, on top of a Royals lineup in which it's getting better. So we're talking hey, I mean, I've seen guys on worse teams get 90 runs scored hitting on top of lineup, and I think that Garcia is one of those guys that could overperform because he maybe just adds a few more stolen bases from the 23 we saw last year, but he adds a boatload of runs.
I'm on board with all that. I think Maikel Garcia is somebody I can definitely end up with. Then I can do the Michael combo there later in drafts and get Massey and Garcia perhaps.
And if you're in Yahoo leagues, he's shortstop eligible. So
bang,
you add that
the little extra flavor there. Let's talk Junior Caminero here. The Rays, we don't know. I will say I'm pretty keen on Jose Caballero, who I believe we did talk about during that trade. Yeah, we do have him on this. I'm looking on his profile page. Yeah, we talked about it on the January 8th episode. I am pretty excited about him. I do think he could really get a lot of that shortstop capability or playing time, I should say. Caminero is one of the most intriguing prospects in baseball. He's way up there. Could be a guy who plays a lot this year, but I don't know that he's going to break camp. Does the Caballero trade undercut your interest in Caminero? Were you not interested in him before? Where do you stand on him? Because he got that little hiccup, or not hiccup, like I call it a shot of espresso when it's not really a cup of coffee. For me, you got to play most of September for a cup of coffee. So he got the call up, and I think it was a reward call up. Here, you had a great season. Come on up and hang out with the team for a little bit. Is that enough for you to be confident that Caminero is going to make the team or be up early? And basically, are you drafting him at 222?
So, for those who don't know, if you listen to the show for any length of time, you'll know that I'm a recovering alcoholic, right? And when I first got sober, before I got sober, and when I first got sober, I was a bartender. and I continued bartending for my first couple years of
Really threw
sobriety.
yourself into the fire there.
Right? Like I just like, hey, it's like being in an AA meeting, but I'm the only one who knows.
Yeah.
So why am I telling you this? Because when I was in my first couple years of sobriety, and I would work at some pretty low, kind of lowly bars, some holes. People always want to take shots with me, and so I would start my shift off by filling up shot glasses with water and soda and stuff like that. So like Caminario's time was just like a little shot of water. It wasn't even a shot of espresso, because espresso like makes you like pumped up and you go, oh my God, look at what he did in this like sample. This was a shot of water, or a shot of like Diet Coke or whatever. Because like, yes, he came up, but like he didn't do anything at all, really.
You barely recognize it. 7 games, 36 plate appearances, a little shot of water for Junior Caminero.
1 home run, like hey,
he got that one on,
and he got a homer, and he like, ostensibly held his own in the 7 games, right?
Got hits in 6 of them, by the way.
Yeah, he only had 81 games at Double-A before making this appearance.
Mm-hmm.
If all the Wander stuff doesn't happen at the end of the season, he's not coming up. Like, this was almost desperation on the Rays' part. Like, hey, we're losing steam. We're gonna, lose this division. Like, we need something, and maybe this premium prospect of ours could be the something. I think he's going down to AAA. Like, I do. I don't think he's starting with a team. I don't think that the trade that they made for Caballero is the reason. I just think that was hey, we need someone. Walls may not be ready to start the season, and we're gonna need someone who can play shortstop, and I don't think Caminero is a guy to play shortstop anyways. Like, I don't think he's good enough defensively at shortstop to man that position. So, at least not long term.
Is that right?
I think he's like an average defender at third. Like, I don't think he's necessarily a guy that, and I could be wrong, and I'm sure people will tweet at me if they believe I'm wrong. So, I think Caminero is going back down to the minors, and who knows when he comes back up. He's one of those guys that could be back. If he's rushed to AAA, he'll be back up at the end of April. But I think there's also a chance in which he's not up till June. And do you want to be holding a guy like that on your rosters? So, especially at this price. So I'm probably not drafting Caminero anywhere unless he drops in a draft. But I think the future is extremely bright for the kid. Just not a guy I want necessarily in my 2024 teams.
Yeah, that's where I'm at for Caminero. I'll pick him up on the waiver wire after everyone who drafts him cuts him.
Exactly.
Because I really do think we're going to see.
It reminds me so much of like CES and Ellie in terms of like, hey, there's really bright future, like a lot of upside, but I'll let someone else draft him and then drop them, and then I will try to grab them maybe a week or so before I think he's getting called out.
Yep, because I just feel like that's how it's going to go, because I don't really see where Caminero forces his way in. If he does, I'll pivot. Right now, I don't think I have to worry about pivoting. What about Jordan Westburg? Talk about another great team in the AL East that has a lot of talent. Now, they've got a lot more talent blocking Westburg than I think the Rays do. But right now, we've got Westburg penciled in as the starting second baseman. He did get plenty of playing time last year at the major league level, 228 plate appearances. So a nice little sample to kind of situate himself. Was kind of a league average type guy. Going to be age 25 too. I don't think there's any reason that he has to be blocked off. I think Westburg has a good shot to break camp and be the guy. I just point out that they have so many options, because we could get bamboozled and then all of a sudden we look up and Westburg isn't making it. But I think that'd be kind of weird if they're not going to make a trade that moves out Westburg or some others to kind of clear some of it. I would be a little bit surprised if he doesn't make the team. What do you think of Jordan Westburg as an everyday player for the O's?
I think Westburg is the perfect accumulator if he was in a situation that I wasn't petrified that he's not going to play full time in.
Who's playing over him though? He's 25. Like, what does he gain by going back to AAA?
No, I
Because
think he's going to be in the majors.
you
But
just think
like,
he's not going to play
I
every
think
day
he's going to hit
in the
ninth, and I
majors.
think he's probably going to play like 5 days a week, which is fine. But like, he doesn't have a carrying tool for fantasy. He's one of those.
True.
He needs to be one of those guys who like hits second in a lineup and plays 145 games, and I think he's more like 125 games, and he's hitting ninth. It's a bad park.
But
He
that's why he's
doesn't have.
picked 300 too.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with the pick.
Second, third eligible.
I'm not enthused by the profile at all.
Okay.
Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with the price. I don't think there's anything wrong. But like, there's nothing that gets me like, he's a perfect DC pick. Like,
Yeah.
if you're in a draft champions, because I think he probably will play more often than not, especially when injuries happen and things like that. Like, his flexibility, ability to move across the diamond over to third base, like, is really, really interesting. But like, he's just kind of boring. And in draft champions, I like that. In AL only leagues, I like that. But in your regular fab leagues, it's nothing. I don't necessarily dislike it. It's not what I'm looking for. I will say though, I have been in plenty of drafts where he just drops, where people see exactly what I'm seeing, and then you start getting him pick 350. You start going, oh, screw it, dual eligible. I put him on my bench.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I mean, that's fine. Like, if he's not my MI or my CI, and he is a bench guy that I'm
Qualifies for
rotating
both.
in. Yeah, exactly. If he's a bench guy that I'm able to kind of just rotate in when I need a guy because of injuries, then he becomes a little bit more interesting. But yeah, I mean, I think he's like probably like a 12 homer, 7 stolen base guy. Like, that is just super boring, especially if he's hitting 9.
Boring, but it is useful.
It's production in those really deep formats. So
yes, and I love that he's
But in your 10 and 12 teamers,
Westburg.
like, do not draft Jordan Westburg.
You don't have to. It's pick 300, right? Most of those don't even run that deep.
He's a waiver wire dude. Yeah,
sure.
In those leagues.
Sure, I think that's okay. This guy might be too. Then Tyler Black for the. Oh wow, I'm looking at this now. What? Okay, yeah. Help me understand this guy. Why is he being drafted at 341? He's not even on the 40 man in Milwaukee. I know he has a lot of speed. He had 55 stolen bases last year.
There you go. People
and he walks a ton too.
Yeah,
people are hyped on Tyler Black. Let's talk about it.
People are dreaming on Tyler Black.
Are they dreaming too high, in your opinion?
I think so. I mean, if he were to get a full-time role, like, we're talking like this is this is a throwback name. You ready? Chone Figgins.
Oh my God. I love Figgy, man.
That's in like an early or mid 2000s third baseman for the Mariners who had like 2 or 3 seasons of like 60 stolen bases.
Does Tyler Black add positional eligibility like Figgins used to?
Yeah, I think he could play second base.
Okay.
So
I'll take second and third. Again, you get that corner and mid.
But like I it's hard because I don't think he's going to be up to start the year. Like I said, he's not on the 40 man. And the Brewers, while they don't have like anybody at third base where you go like, oh, he's blocked off by this guy. I don't see any reason for them to put him on the 40 man so that way they can get him up to the 26 man roster, especially when Jahmai Jones, who they picked up, and I think they like a little bit kind of as a bench guy because his flexibility, has 0 options left. So I don't know, like, will he find his way to the majors this year? I think there's a chance. I think it's a decent chance, and I think he becomes a really sneaky speed guy once he does. But unless he goes out and kills it in spring training, I don't think he's making this team. And
yeah, he put up some gaudy numbers, Tyler Black. 18 homers, 55 steals, 12 triples, Not that that's a fantasy category, but he was just stat
15
stuffing
plus.
all over.
He's never had a walk rate lower than 15.5% in the minor leagues.
That's very appealing too.
And he struck out a 13% rate in AAA, a 20% rate in AA last year. So he's got, a pretty good hit tool, a really, really good sense of where the strike zone is. I don't think there's very much power, but like he could be a league average guy when he kind of finishes, the power development. But there is speed. The problem is he's not a very good defender, which is very Joan Figgins like, if I'm remembering correctly. So
was Figgins a bad defender? I'm not questioning
I don't remember
with the answer in hand. I'm questioning you to question my memory because I thought he was pretty good, but I'm not gonna die on that hill.
I think he was one of those, and I'm double checking kind of the stats. Mediocre.
Up and down seasons.
He had during his stretch run, he had some really good defensive seasons and some really bad defensive seasons.
Okay.
And Tyler Black, you look at like the scouting report from Eric, and he's it's a 30 to 45 grade field.
Got it.
So he's not like, if he was like a potential for an average to above average defender, then you'd be like, okay, maybe we got something here with that. But the fact that he is probably a below average to average defender probably doesn't help his cause, especially when I think one of the reasons they like Bryce Strang at second is because he's a good defender.
Yeah. Man, I just keep looking at these numbers and they're high.
And this is why he's going where he's going.
Yeah, 341 for Tyler Black hasn't touched the majors. Like the market is betting on him. And I know 341's not a huge pick. I understand that. But that's an investment in a DC for somebody who hasn't played in the majors yet.
I think what's happening is people are doing exactly what I did this offseason, which was like looking through the ADP and going, who the hell is Tyler Black? And you're like, all right, well, I'm going to go over to Fangraphs and I'm going to take a look at Tyler Black. And then you go, holy crap, in terms of the stolen bases. Because like the stolen bases, like I said, I don't think there's a ton of power, at least yet. At best, he's, league average power guy down the road. But more than likely he is, I think what people are dreaming on is like he could be Cabrian Hayes. I keep saying this guy's Cabrian Hayes' podcast.
Wait. His defense is way worse. Cabrian Hayes is excellent.
Oh no, but I mean from an offensive profile. A guy who can make a lot of contact, doesn't have great power, but there's enough, and can steal a bunch of bases with batting average. But I just don't know that Tyler Black is on the roster, and I don't know when he's going to be on the roster. So
at age 23, could make it up this year. Could easily see that. Might not break camp though. And if he's your gamble guy, okay, or one of the few, we've talked about it in the DCs. Don't do too many, but if you got a few gambles there, maybe he's one of them because you're betting on that speed. It'll be interesting with Tyler Black for sure. I have to pee, and you know that I can't hold it because I have an ant bladder. So Keith Colt, you could just spend an hour trying to figure out which name it is. So talk about Colt Keith. It's actually Colt Keith, not Keith Cole, which you love to call him, at pick 355. Also hasn't made the majors, by the way. So this is another guy who, despite not making the majors, is a relatively decent investment, given that he hasn't made the majors yet. Do you like Colt Keith for the 2023 season in DC, or 2024 season in DCs? And I'll be right back.
So I think that a guy like Colt Keith or Keith Colt, depending on how you're feeling that day, and Tyler Black for that matter, is a really good example of like, hey, there's some massive drop-offs at third base, and at some point you kind of run out of options. So instead of going to the Yoan Moncadas of the world or the DJ LeMahieu of the world, people are going to Tyler Black and they're going to Colt Keith to kind of find lightning in a bottle. Hey, if this guy makes the majors, especially early on, like there's a chance like he could be really, really interesting. He had 13 home runs, stole one base, with a 287, 369, 521 triple slash, 11% walk rate, and a sub 20% strikeout rate. Like, I think the skills on Colt Keith are actually really, really interesting. The question is, when is Colt Keith up? I mean, maybe that's a better question for you, being a Tigers fan. But they also have Justin Henry Malloy, who's in the minor leagues. They also have Jace Young, who's in the minor leagues. Like, when are these guys coming up, and which guy comes up first is a question that I don't really have the answer for. I've taken some gambles on Colt Keith because I do think there is a ton of upside with a guy who can have I think he could be very Josh Young. So he plays with, brother of Josh Young, Chase Young.
Mm-hmm.
But I think he could be very Josh Young-esque, which is a guy that, has a decent batting average, hits for power, but unlike Josh Young, he walks, which is even better. So I just think there is a chance he is on that. Colt Keith is on the opening day roster. I think there's also a chance that he's not up till June. So it's kind of a little bit of a gamble.
Depends on how well he plays at AAA when he goes back. He spent 2 months there, did well. We'll see. We'll see if he gets, the chance outright in spring. You mentioned those names that could make that difficult for him, and that is definitely true. Matt Vierling is still somebody that I think they have some interest in, and maybe he plays third. So it's kind of a cluster right now, but I think Keith is somebody who can hit his way through, and a huge spring, I do think would bring him to the forefront as somebody who could break camp. 355, I am okay paying it. Again, it would be in here's my 4 gambles. Or whatever number I set for myself. Keith would have to be one of them because he doesn't have a spot right now, and I don't know. I would probably just take the next guy, though. Can we bring in Brett Baty here and just say that he goes literally the next pick? Why wouldn't I just take him? And obviously, I'm not even using my Tigers bias here. I'm moving away from the Tiger to go with the Met. Why wouldn't I just take Baty, who has a better avenue to the playing time, even if it's not locked, loaded, and set for 2024. What do you think of Baty with New York after what he did last year, which was have some ups and downs? A lot of downs, by the way.
One of the things I was going to say on Keith, which I think kind of tells you why you should maybe probably take Brett Baty over him, is Keith had about 300 plate appearances at every level. Right. So he had about 300 plate appearances at high A, got moved up. 276 plate appearances at double A, got moved up. And then he finished with 301 plate appearances. So there's a chance I think he gets moved up to the majors. But Brett Baty had 389 plate appearances at the majors. And the Mets don't have anybody else that really should be playing third base for them. Now, I say should be as opposed to can.
Yeah.
Because the Mets seemingly treated Brett Baty not like a top prospect last year, but like a guy who slept with someone's sister. Well, now it's a different front office, so whoever's sister he slept with is gone. And I think Baty is the kind of guy that is a perfect post-type sleeper, a guy that everybody was really, really excited about coming into last year that struggled in his first go-around, and it's now a little bit forgotten about. I like Brett Baty a lot this year. I think there's a ton of power in that bat. I think he's going to get opportunity. I don't know that he's ever going to be like a plus batting average guy, but I could see him being like a 250 dude, 255 guy. And I think there's 30 home runs in that bat. So
I'm with you.
I'm grabbing a lot of Brett Baty this year.
I co-sign all of that with Baty. I'm just stretching out my legs for anybody watching the YouTube. I'm standing up.
It's a very good view of you.
Yeah, it's like from my neck down to my thigh.
Mm-hmm. It's your neck,
real good
knees,
look here.
Right? Yeah.
Here, we can tilt the camera up there if you guys really want to see me. But no, I'm with you on Baty, and I just want him. Now, I will ask you this, and I think this is a fair question. If his name was Keith Colt, would that change your outlook? For
Why
those that
would
don't
that
know,
change?
Justin always calls him the wrong name. I'm just
Yeah.
wondering if he was the name you thought he was, would you like him more?
You know what the funny part is that I didn't even catch the fact that he switched switched Keith Colt's name there because I'm so used to calling
That's
him Colt
yeah,
Keith.
that really
Um,
underscores the point is that you just don't know. No, let's move on. Let's go to Ezequiel Duran. Am I like listen, I wasn't even the biggest Zeke Duran guy like during the hype periods that he got last year, but he put up 439 plate appearances of a 107 WRC plus, so a bit above league average, 14 homers, 8 steals. I know it came with a 27% K rate and 5% walk. That's a bad plate approach. But he's 25. Why is he almost pick 400? What am I missing here? Are they just thinking that he's going to get run out by Langford or something? Is that should he still be pick 400 in that case? It's 395. But what do you think of Zeke Duran?
I think part of the issue is he started to lose playing time last year at kind of towards the end of the season. Like he was Duran was pretty much an everyday player for a vast majority of the first part of the season. And then as the season kind of went on and regression hit, he became more of a part-time kind of guy. Where like in the last 2 weeks of the season, he played 4 times.
Yikes.
Um,
Is that a
and
lack of lefties or just a lack of interest in him?
I think a
You
little
don't have
bit
to
of
look it up.
both.
He was
Yeah,
not playing as much, and that is
yeah.
definitely an issue. And
So I think there is some risk that um, he kind of moves into a super utility role where he's
yep,
a guy who can play every position. Like he can play short, he can play third, he can play second, he can play the outfield, right? Um, but that he isn't strong enough anywhere, and the plate skills aren't amazing to kind of force the team to play him regularly, where he could turn into a 330 plate appearance guy, which just doesn't move the needle. And so, yes, he's multi-positional eligible. He did have 400 plus plate appearances last year, but he kind of had the opposite story of what you're looking for. Is you're looking for a young guy who only had 400 plate appearances because at the beginning of the year he didn't have a role, as opposed to at the end of the year, which is Duran's issue, is where he didn't have a role, and that is likely, or that could be very likely to continue coming into 2024.
I think that makes a lot of sense. With Duran, I still think that 400 might be a pretty fair pick for him.
I think it could be
Um,
as well.
are you interested? So you have some interest in him there?
I have a little bit of interest in him there, I mean, but if you want to see the story, just go look at his splits page. First half, he had 12 home runs with a 308 batting average. Second half, he had 2 home runs with a 226 batting average.
Oof.
Really hot to start. They gave him the playing time, but as soon as he cooled off, he lost the playing time. And I think that is kind of the position the Rangers are in because they've got so much talent in that offense that, like, hey, yeah, if he's running hot, he can play. And
Yeah,
because he's so flexible, he can play everywhere. But if he goes back to being kind of what he was in the second half, he's not going to play.
that's fair. And like I said, Langford chasing behind could take that DH spot that we currently have Duran penciled into. It could be tough to find that PT, and then he becomes maybe less of a super util and just a regular util, meaning it's 3 times a week, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't think he's a bad pick. I think all this risk for Duran is covered at pick 395. So if
Mm-hmm.
you like him, feel free to go for him. But there is heavy risk. You're not stealing somebody, I don't believe. I think you're getting somebody
Yeah.
that the market is maybe overestimating the risk a little bit. Maybe he's 333. Maybe that's the better pick for Ezequiel Duran. But take the discount, move on, and enjoy. Go back to Tampa Bay here. Curtis Mead at pick 448. He's somebody I really like. I think the dude can just hit. Now, he is one of those utility types that they kind of slot at some spots because he's not very good at any of them. First, third, he might have a little second, and so it might not even be that much
Mm-hmm.
utility. The bottom line is he doesn't have much defense, but he can swing it. Is Curtis Mead somebody who could be pushing for some PT this year in Tampa Bay? He did get 92 plate appearances last year, about a league average guy, nothing to write home about for 92 plate appearances. But what do you think of Curtis Mead this year?
Curtis Mead reminds me of like a right-handed Daniel Murphy, like a guy who's just like we know he can swing the bat. There's I think a pretty good hit tool and a fair amount of power in the profile, but I just don't know where his defensive home is. And on a team like the Rays that like good defense, especially in the infield, I just have a really hard time seeing where he is going to play regularly, especially for the first half of the season. And so when we talk,
DH.
do they want like they love Harold Ramirez?
True.
True. I just
both righties too. Yeah.
I think he's kind of got the same fate as Junior Caminero, which is he's going to go back down to the minor leagues, and
he's 4 years older though.
Yeah, and I do think
wait, no. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I interrupt you back-to-back times there. He's 22. I was looking at his 24 games played. That makes him 1 year older.
He's 20. Curtis Mead is 23.
So he's going into his age 23 season. What's Caminero going into? Age 21?
Yeah, I believe so. Caminero's really young.
Yeah. Oh no, he's going into his age 20. So it is 3 years.
Yeah.
I think I said 4.
So
it is a big age difference.
I think Mead is up first.
Okay.
But Caminero is a better defender. Even
True.
with what I said about his, I don't think Caminero should be playing shortstop, but Caminero is definitely a better defender. And I think Mead, he needs to figure out a defensive home, whether that's going to be third base, which has kind of been his natural position, or second base, which is a position that he's kind of toyed around a little bit. But I think one of the reasons he was up was, again, the injuries, right? They lost Wander Franco, then they had, injuries to guy like Brandon Lau. And so they're like, hey, we just need a body, and maybe this could be a spark plug kind of guy for us. I still think eventually they will figure out a home for him, and that he's going to be a very good player. And if you look at most prospect lists, he's still in the top 20 of most people's, top 100 prospect list for MLB. And so, I think it gets figured out at some point. So I'm not down on him necessarily, but for this year, he's not a guy I'm drafting necessarily.
That's not out of pocket there. As much as I like Mead, I'm not necessarily getting him everywhere either. At 448, I'll take my shot here and there, but I usually try to do 3, maybe 4 DCs. I might have him on 1. Michael Busch, we talked about him during his trade. We are excited. I just want to give an update that there's only been one DC that's finished since he's been traded, and he went 362. His ADP since Christmas is 482. So there you go. There's a 120 pick jump. It might go even higher than that. I forget what we speculated his price might jump to. Where are you comfortable buying Michael Busch?
That is a really good question. I had somebody, and I'm blanking on his first name, so I apologize. But he's a newer writer over at Razzball, last name Kelder. I'm going to give him a shout out.
While you're looking that up, I will point out that I do see some other drafts that aren't DCs that are in that same range: 344, 325, 333, 345. This is Michael Busch we're talking about here.
Yeah,
so he's going to go into the mid 300s. Go ahead. What was the guy's name?
His 80 Michael Busch's ADP in the RotoWire Online Championship, which are one night drafts, right? Is pick 350.
There you go. So mid 300s for Busch. Are you comfortable paying that?
I think I am. This guy, who I can't find his Twitter handle. I'm going to try to find it before the end of the episode. Okay. He asked me, like, is he a top 25 third baseman for you right now? Which insinuates it might be for him. And I kind of like the spicy take, but as much as I've loved Michael Busch in the past, I think there's a reasonable chance he platoons. And I think there's also a reasonable chance he's not really playing very much. While I want to get excited and in his free Michael Busch season, they got guys there,
I'm getting excited. I don't care.
I know you are, but I also want to temper my expectations. So far, the market hasn't gone crazy. I'm fine with a 3.
No, mid 300s.
Yeah, like
Hey,
that's
Eugenio Suarez is the 25th ranked third baseman. So to give you an idea of where
and
we're
that
at there.
feels like not a fair level because Eugenio Suarez is going to play every day.
He doesn't have to be at that level, though, right? That's not the price that he's coming at.
Yeah.
So the guy from Rasball is saying, could he get there? Even if you agree, you don't have to pay that. You're paying the 33rd type level, mid to early to mid 30s, third baseman off the board, even with the elevated pick price at mid 300s for Michael Busch. So even if you do agree with him and you say, yeah, I think he could get up to that level, that's okay because you're not paying that full premium. And I don't think he'll get up. I don't think Michael Busch will get up to Suarezian prices.
I mean, I hope not, because if he does, like, that's insanity. But I do like the upside, man. And like, he's one of these guys that all he's really needed was an opportunity. Michael Busch he's not a good defender at all, and so like, I really do question some of his ability to stay on the field regularly if
Sure.
they care about the defense, and I think that they probably do. And my big concern is what happens when like Cody Bellinger resigns in a place like Chicago, because not that like they're vying like for the same position or anything, obviously, but it's just one less spot. And like, Cody Bellinger comes in and is playing center, which means that maybe Tauchman goes to DH, which means Morel goes to third base.
Isn't Tauchman a good defender?
Yeah, or Cody Bellinger, goes to wherever.
He would maybe just take first.
Yeah, takes first. And who do they have projected at first right now?
Busch.
Oh yeah,
then Busch directly takes Busch's job.
I was thinking Busch at third. So,
and in the same mining the news that I referenced earlier, the Cubs, Jeff had a piece about the Cubs talking about how Morel's going to play. That his bat is too good not to play, so they want to play him consistently. My question is, do they can use him? I'm not saying he wouldn't add to the team, but do they really still need Cody Bellinger?
I don't think they need him
because they're pretty horny for Tauchman. Personally, if I was running the team, I would just get him and Tauchman goes to the bench.
Yeah, absolutely.
But they let him lead off like the entire second half.
Yeah, which is
like they ridiculous. Like him a lot.
Maybe Mike Tauchman is this year's Cedric Mullins.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very excited and I want to get hyped, but there's this other part of me, which is my fantasy baseball conscience, that goes, be careful. Like this feels like a trap. It absolutely feels like a trap.
I think that's completely fair to say. The only thing I will say that covers that is the price.
Yeah.
So it might be.
It's not a bad price at all right now.
Yes.
So
at least we don't have to pay much to find out on Busch, even with the elevated cost. Now, if it keeps going, and then let's say he has a nice spring, and so it jumps even further, if we start to see all that sort of stuff add up, okay, well, then we're on a different level with Michael Busch. But right now in that mid 300s range, I'm still going to take my shots. And I'll probably have him on multiple teams. So last guy here at the youth movement before we kind of open it up for anybody else, Coby Mayo, 515, way down the list. But are you considering him for your DCs? He's not on the 40. He's age 22 season this year. Played at double in AAA, basically split him in half. Actually, a little bit more at AA, 78 games, 62 at AAA. But, nice two-level season in the high minors. Did well at both. Takes a lot of walks, has some punch. Can Coby Mayo break through this year, or is there just too many players there to really feel confident about that for Coby Mayo?
I mean, I think it's really hard to kind of figure out like where the playing time comes from. That being said, like he's not like some of these other Baltimore prospects like the Jordan Westburgs, where I go, this guy doesn't have a carrying tool in fantasy. Coby Mayo definitely has a carrying tool in fantasy. It is the power. There is some speed in the profile, but it's like, hey, if he can hit for a league average batting average, it's going to come with a ton of power. And I think that there is a chance that he breaks through pretty early on in the season. I don't know that he's going to make the majors to start the year, but he could. Like, there is, like, I mean, we're talking about a guy who's shown really, really good plate skills, 15% walk rates in AA and AAA in 2023 with, 23, 25% strikeout rates. Like, it's not egregious for the kind of power that he projects to have. Like, I think Kobe Mayo has the ability to hit 30 plus homers if he got 600 plate appearances. The question is, how many plate appearances can we reasonably project for him? So he is a guy that I would definitely take a dart throw on if I needed power kind of in a draft champions.
Yep, I think that's something that I can definitely get behind with Kobe Mayo. Now open it up to anyone else here. I mean, I could have made some more tiers, but things really just kind of open up after this with a lot of different players that I can carve out areas of intrigue for. You're looking at like DJ LeMahieu, Chris Taylor, Yoan Moncada, and Matt Vierling still in that 371 to 385 range. Zack McKinstry did some things last year. He had some appeal when he was stealing, pick 406. Nick Senzel, pick 416. Now in Washington, Anthony Rendon. I mean, if he got any health, maybe there's a dead cat bounce. I don't know. Maybe some guys I haven't listed here. Where else you look? Actually, before I give you the floor, I want to, on players to name, I want to ask you about LeMahieu. Are you taking the shot on LeMahieu at 371?
Yes, we already had this conversation.
We did, didn't we?
Yeah.
Okay. It felt familiar when I asked. Yes. I just took him in a league, so I must have been influenced by that because I was like, yeah, this feels good. Okay, so move on from LeMahieu then. First off, any of these guys on this list you want to highlight before I give you the option to bring up others?
And no, and not really, and there's not really others. I mean, maybe Jose Miranda, like later on, maybe he figures it back out again or something like that. But I mean, I think this is the reason why, and I kind of mentioned this briefly when you were going to the bathroom when we were talking about Colt Keith. Keith,
you said
Colt.
it right.
I'm gonna say it both ways every time now. Is that the reason why guys like him are going kind of like a little bit higher than maybe we would expect by the fact that we don't know where the playing time's coming from, is because after you get past them, there isn't very much that's interesting. Like there is a lot of
cut it off so quickly.
Yeah, this is
who are
boring production, or guys that might have playing time but probably will lose playing time or don't have playing time. And I think this is, while third base I think is better than maybe last year, the drop-offs are steep. And if you don't get your third baseman or your backup third baseman in a DC like early enough, you're going to be in some pain. And so this is why some of the other third basemen are going a little bit higher than maybe they quote unquote deserve to, because the back end of the pool sucks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And that's what surprised me here as I was looking through things. I was like, this drops. And then I don't care about any of these guys here. They're all so similarly blah. And you can find some crusty veterans. You can find some post-type guys like a Nick Senzel if you want to get into that. Some mid-tier kind of, I don't know. He could be fine types. Any love for Moncada? I mean, it's been 2 low playing time years now, too. Okay, last one I'll mention then. What about Jared Triolo? Played a decent bit last year. I feel like maybe they can have him as a utility. We currently do not have him penciled in at roster resource after 209 plate appearances last year for the 26-year-old. He struck out a lot, but he took walks. I kind of feel like he could be a volume guy for them.
I got to do this quick because I unfortunately have to
no problem.
run.
Yeah,
but I feel like Pittsburgh's got a few of these kind of guys, and Triolo may have like an opportunity to be kind of the first guy to get playing time. I think that they've got G1 Bay, they've got Connor Joe, they've got a lot of these guys who can play multiple positions, but probably aren't particularly very good. And I worry about the strikeout rate with him. So I think he's one of those guys you take a shot on and you'll know really, really quickly if he's playing or not. If he's playing once or twice a week, then you just drop, move on to the next one.
Pick 549 too, so you're not really investing too much there in Jared Triol. All right, then you got to get to work. Great talking with you. Keep safe with the storm coming and everything. I hope everything goes well for y'all. Power stays on. You and I'll be back on Monday talking another position. I don't know which one yet. Talk to you later.
Take it easy.